Pablo Torre he may have dropped one of the greatest journalistic masterpieces in the past 5-6 years. And honestly, I can only hope that this changed the landscape of the NBA in totality. Okay, so Pablo Torres, he has uncovered one of the biggest alleged cap circumventions since 2003 in this very stadium in the Minnesota Timberwolves. So if you're under a rock, there's been some reports that Kawhi Leonard has been taking some money from the company known as Aspirations, and their whole identity, the whole subsect of what they do, they plant trees. They're trying to make the world a greener place, so it may seem. But as the records show, it might just be a facade, a fake, just a way to launder some money, just a way to launder some goddamn money. That's all it's looking like at the moment. So Kawhi Leonard has allegedly accepted 28 to some numbers say over $40 million to be a sponsor for this company called Aspiration. You might be wondering, what does that have to do with anything? Athletes, actors, everybody takes sponsorships. That's how they're able to make more moolah. And here is where it gets tricky. Allegedly, it looks like the Clippers have been funding the company Aspirations to be able to pay a guy like Kawhi Leonard on the back end. And you know why that's interesting? Because the NBA has a very strict cap, and it's even more interesting because of these past 2-3 years. There is a new CBA contract that may have changed the landscape of the NBA forever, making it nearly impossible for teams to be able to retain and pay their own guys. I.e., you cannot build a super team in this era of basketball. And you're already seeing some of the ramification of a team like the Boston Celtics when they're not able to sign everybody. So instead they have to go on a quick fire sale. So why is this interesting? Before we even talk about the interesting part about it, I want to talk about the fact that there was so many loose ends in this whole operation. From the point of Kawhi Leonard not even showing up, not tweeting about them, not taking no pictures, planting trees, not doing anything with anybody in regards to actually being an ambassador, a showman for this company. And that's kind of what started the weirdness, because like, okay, so they're literally paying you to do nothing. Weird. And it can't even be like there's been other celebrities. There's been a mountain of celebrities that's been intertwined with this quote-unquote fake company for the past like 5-6 years. The number one that comes to mind is a guy like Robert Downey Jr. There's guys like Drake. There's a multitude of celebrities, actors, actresses, and NBA talents that has been intertwined with this company. And the vibe seems to be this is more of a shell company that's being used by the Clippers to be able to pay their guys. Because one of the things that you start to notice, number one, the way that the Clippers have set up their team, they kind of have it in the same way as the old guard, where the best thing you could do is, we are not that good at drafting, so let's just go ahead and pay the superstars. Because in a sport like basketball, superstars are the one that will win you the championship. They will be the team. Whatever team has the more talent will technically, not all the time, but more times than not, be able to get past at least the first round. And you can see that in the past couple of years where the best teams tend to have the most all-stars piled up into one area. And here's where things get interesting, because of the Clippers are a pretty good team on paper, an old team on paper, and that kind of where things get a little bit muddy, because it's when you have not just old players, but players that are veterans, players that have stayed in the league as long as they have. they tend to cost a pretty penny. Like, for example, a guy like James Harden, guy like Kawhi Leonard. A couple of years ago when they had guys like Russ and Paul George and all these nearly max level players all on one contract, where it's like, okay, fine, they're not as good as they once were. It's fine, we will not give you that $50 million. But here's what we will do. We will give you up until, and here's where it gets weird. Kawhi Leonard took a pay cut to come to the, Kawhi took a pay cut to stay with the Clippers. And you must be wondering, why would you do that? Especially when you're still riding as a top 10, top 15 player, depending on how healthy a guy is. It's like, no, I'll take a pay cut to be able to build a better team. Interesting, because he hasn't been a type of guy to do that in his career, because he's always known, I'm a little injury prone. It's very unlikely that I'm going to be able to stick through the whole time. So let me get as much as I can every step of the way. So the Clippers going and trying to circumvent the cap by using a third party to be able to pay their players. It starts to stir up a couple questions, because number one, who's that guy? Because number one, a guy like Mark Cuban, right? He went on a podcast and he was talking with Pablo Torre, and he was like, well, first of all, number one, Steve Ballmer would not be so dumb to have such a paper trail that leads directly to him. And number two, do you think that, I think you know that other teams are also doing that. And if other teams are doing that, that tends to poke a few holes in the integrity. It pokes a few holes in the integrity of the game, and it pokes a couple integrity of the NBA in total. And that's a problem when you're trying to sell tickets and trying to actually make an organization run like that. And that's where some of the real problems come in. Because if other teams are doing that, there's already been a conversation around small markets versus big markets that's been plaguing the NBA for the past at least 3 years, but more primarily in this last year that we just had with the OKC Thunder and the Indiana Pacers in the NBA Finals, both two very, very small market teams, right? And they were able to make it all the way to the finals, which was very rare. And it was kind of weird in the prospect of everybody else just watching, because this is not a thing that happens so frequently. And then you start noticing a couple things. So you're telling me if teams are paying guys under the table to circumvent this salary cap that they have, the second apron is what they're fearing the most right now, where if they reach this amount of money, there's going to be penalties. But then there's the second apron. And once you hit that, your team is kind of handicapped for the next 5 to 6 years. But as we're looking at teams doing this, okay, so you're telling me there's a objective advantage for the bigger franchises in this league, and you don't think that's problematic in the long term? I feel like that leads to a lot more hard-hitting questions that these teams are not ready to have, especially when they have billionaires, but not just any billionaire. Steve Ballmer is a top, he's top 7 richest humans in the world as we speak. And you're telling me you're not going to try and put a little cap here and there, try to stop or at least slow it down? Because what is really stopping teams? There was a fake article that was also released this weekend where Jeannie Buss, quote unquote, tipped Luka Doncic's restaurants in Slovenia. I think it was $20 million or something of that nature. And there's all this rah-rah about, what is this? Is this real? Is this fake? It turns out it's more than likely just very fake. But here's where the real conversation is. If it would be that quote-unquote easy to circumvent the cap, where you're able to be you know what, Luka? I know, let's say you're a team like the Los Angeles Lakers, and you're like, you know what, Jokic, take this vet minimum. I'll give you 400 M's on the back end, especially when it looks like literal chump change to a lot of these billionaires, specifically a guy like Ballmer that actively does not give a damn. He does not give a damn. He does not care, not at all. And then as you're watching, you're like, at what point, if this goes on, it is such a bad look that you might as well just remove the cap in totality and just say, make it baseball, pay whatever it is that you need. But the main problem with doing it like that, at least in this league, like I said earlier, whoever has the best talents will win. Because I was thinking about this in the context of baseball, there is sometimes where a guy that's like rated really low, Moneyball situations, you are able to get so much more out of a player like that because it's kind of hard to scout in baseball. But when you turn to basketball, you know who's the top 10. There's a unanimous top 15, top 20 NBA players in the league. And it gets pretty concise when you start getting the top 10s, the top 5s, and top 3s, right? And that leads me to this point of Adam Silver. Please lock in. Please lock in. I know what position that you are in, and it's very difficult because of he's one of the main reasons why people are saying that he has not made any adverse moves or have been as swift and as punitive as other commissioners is because he says, hey, there is no smoking gun. There's no proof. If anything, Steve Ballmer could have just been ran for a loop. And that's just the way it is. Sometimes people just get taken advantage of. He didn't know. What are we supposed to do? And there's been some reports that other GMs are like, okay, if y'all want to play this game, us as the New York Knicks or Miami Heat or even a team like the Los Angeles Lakers, you don't want a team like LA or Boston to be like, you know what? Let's go band for band. If that's really the way that you want to push this league, because there's always a bigger fish, right? There's always a bigger fish, or at least there's always a fish willing to fillet itself for the chance of having the bragging rights of the game. And that's kind of what it all also boils down to, because one of the things you notice, the people that buy NBA teams, they have this knack of using it as bragging rights because of putting 100 M's into trying to get a sports team compared to putting 100 M's into the stock market, for example, is not the same. It's not the same type of bragging rights. You don't hang out with the same cool individuals. You're not really intertwined with the society and the things of that nature. You're just a guy that invested. But if you put it in an NBA team, everybody wants their name on the statue. You want your name on the building. There's a reason you go that route instead of the other one. And that's kind of like the weird thing, because people are saying there needs to be a smoking gun or at least some legitimate deep proof besides the circumstantial numbers being literally perfect or accounts having the literal name of these NBA players. They need that smoking gun. They need that irrefutable proof of someone say, yeah, send that bread. And they don't have it. But here's where the real conversation starts. You don't need that. If there's one thing the commissioner needs, it's himself to feel it. If it's in his heart, that's all he needs. That's all he got to do, especially in the NBA because of the former commissioner, David Stern. Because everybody might love Adam Silver. Everyone must revere him. They must say, hey, he's a good guy. I personally think he's a fantastic commissioner. He has been dropping gems. You've seen the in-season tournament. That's fire. But there's one thing that they don't do. They do not fear him. They are not scared of a guy like Adam Silver. But let's turn the page. Let's look back to the old guy, David Stern. There has been legends told about him. He was the one that cleaned up the NBA. He inadvertently made the game soft himself. He said, oh, y'all want to start fighting? Don't worry about it. suspended, and I'll let you know when you can come back. He was throwing out fines. He was throwing out suspensions. He was throwing out bannings like it's any other day. Like it's just something you do because you can. At some points, it feels like, oh, you could do this in my league? Don't worry about it. You will never be in my league again. And kind of like the main idea that I've been setting throughout this whole video, it sets a bad precedent when you're constantly being undermined in the league. And that's kind of, he said this recently in a press conference about trying to put the hammer on the Clippers. He was like, well, for the individual, I should not mess up this quote, but the quote basically summed up to the idea of the NBA is a highlight league. If you can't watch the game, that's fine. Go on YouTube, go on NBA TV, go on all these different websites and setups that you could just watch the highlights. That's all you need. My brother, please, 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 please. Don't ever say that again. Don't ever say it again. Don't ever disrespect my game like that again. And that kind of just like falls in between the ideologies that is separated between these two type of individuals on how much that they really want to put their own hands inside the game. And it kind of reminds me of